The year is 1981, and Queen Elizabeth II rides calmly during the Trooping the Color Parade, unaware that history is about to shatter the silence. In the crowd, a young man named Marcus Sargent raises a revolver and fires 6 deafening shots, blank cartridges, but the sound alone is enough to send shockwaves through the air. For a split second, the world holds its breath. Soldiers freeze, horses panic, the audience gasps, and yet the Queen remains composed, steady on her black horse, as if defying fear itself. That moment, captured in this rare photograph, wasn't just a test of security, but of human resilience under fire. Imagine the tension, the chaos, the uncertainty, and one woman's unshakable poise that transformed a near tragedy into a symbol of courage history will never forget. He was called the Killer, a rock and roll legend who set pianos on fire with his sound. But in 1958, Jerry Lee Lewis ignited a scandal that nearly destroyed his career. At just 22 years old, the world discovered he had secretly married his 13-year-old cousin, Myra. This shocking revelation sent shockwaves through America and beyond. Concerts were canceled, fans turned away, and headlines branded him a disgrace. In this rare photo, the tension is almost palpable. Jerry Lee clings to his young bride, defiant yet desperate, as cameras captured the moment that would haunt him forever. What was meant to be a triumphant rise in music history turned into one of rock's darkest controversies, a reminder of how fame can crumble in an instant when personal choices collide with public outrage. January 22, 1987. What should have been an ordinary press conference in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, turned into one of the most haunting moments ever captured on live television. Robert Bud Dwyer, the state treasurer, stood before reporters, accused of corruption and facing years in prison. But instead of pleading his case, he pulled out an envelope. Inside, a .357 Magnum revolver. Cameras kept rolling as confusion filled the room. "Stay back," he warned, his hand raised as if to push the world away. And then, an irreversible decision that left an entire nation in shock. This photo freezes the very last second before tragedy struck, a chilling reminder of how quickly power, shame, and despair can collide. It remains one of history's most disturbing images, forever etching Dwyer's downfall into America's collective memory. October 1954, Kimberley, South Africa. Beneath the glitter of the world's most coveted diamonds lay a darker truth. At the De Beers mines, workers were not simply searched at the end of their shifts. They were X-rayed, their very bodies treated like potential hiding places for stolen gems. This photograph captures the haunting reality. A miner stands rigid, chest pressed against a cold machine, as radiation scans for contraband he never touched. For the companies, it was about protecting wealth. For the workers, it was a daily violation of dignity, safety, and trust. Behind every sparkling diamond worn in luxury, there were shadows of control, exploitation, and silent suffering. This image forces us to confront the cost of beauty and the human price hidden beneath the glittering facade of the diamond trade. September 1939, Bydgoszcz, Poland. What began as the chaos of invasion quickly descended into one of the darkest atrocities of the war. German SS, police units, and the paramilitary Selbstschutz unleashed a reign of terror on the civilian population, accusing locals of resistance and slaughtering thousands in cold blood. This photograph freezes a harrowing moment. 2 men, hands raised in desperation, stand before their captors while bodies already lie lifeless on the street behind them. The fear etched on their faces tells a story words can hardly capture. A town crushed under the weight of brutality, where innocence offered no protection. And the most haunting truth? Almost none of the perpetrators faced justice. History remembers Bydgoszcz not just for its suffering, but as a chilling reminder of how quickly humanity can vanish when hate takes control. In the days following September 11th, 2001, New York City was a city in shock, a city scarred. And yet, amid the twisted steel of the fallen towers, life carried on in surreal ways. This haunting photograph captures a couple washing their Mazda Miata just blocks from ground zero, while behind them, the wreckage of the World Trade Center still smolders. The contrast is jarring, ordinary life colliding with unimaginable tragedy. Was it denial, resilience, or simply the need to cling to normalcy in the face of chaos? This image forces us to ask how humans process trauma, by grieving, by fighting, or sometimes by doing the most mundane of tasks. It is a snapshot of a nation trying to hold itself together, even as the weight of history pressed down on every street in Manhattan. August 14, 1936, Owensboro, Kentucky. A crowd of nearly 20,000 men, women, and even children gathered, not for a festival, but for a public execution. Rainey Bethia, convicted of the rape and murder of Liskia Edwards, was led to the gallows in what would become the last public hanging in the United States. What should have been a solemn act of justice turned into a carnival-like spectacle. Vendors selling food, people climbing rooftops for a better view, and the atmosphere more like entertainment than punishment. This haunting photograph captures the unsettling truth: how easily society can blur the line between justice and spectacle. The embarrassment that followed forced Kentucky, and eventually the nation, to end public executions. A chilling reminder that sometimes the darkest chapters of history are not just the crimes themselves, but how eagerly the crowds came to watch. In the 1920s and early 1930s, Germany was a nation broken by war, crushed by debt, and desperate for answers. Into that void stepped Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party, not through a sudden coup, but by exploiting democracy itself. They campaigned in the streets, filled rallies with spectacle, and promised strength to a population drowning in humiliation and fear. This photograph shows the movement's rise, with crowds cheering, salutes raised, and a sense of unity that masked the darkness ahead. What began as a political strategy within the rules of Weimar Germany would soon dismantle those very rules, replacing ballots with brutality. It is a stark reminder that tyranny often doesn't storm in overnight. It walks through the front door of democracy, welcomed by those convinced it will save them. Step back to 1970, a world that feels both familiar and impossibly distant. A brand new house averaged just $23,450, while the average income was $9,400 a year. A shiny new car cost about $3,450, and the minimum wage was $2.10 an hour. Everyday prices sound almost unreal today. A gallon of gas for 36 cents, a loaf of bread for 25 cents, and a movie ticket for only $1.55. Even luxuries, like coffee at $1.90 a pound or eggs at 59 cents a dozen, were within easy reach. Looking at this list, it's more than just numbers. It's a snapshot of a different America when the cost of living painted a picture of possibility. It reminds us how much times have changed and how quickly history transforms the value of a dollar. August 14, 1945, inside the White House, chaos erupted, but it wasn't fear, it was history in motion. President Harry Truman had just announced Japan's surrender, officially ending World War II, and the press corps exploded into action. Reporters sprinted across the checkered floor, desperate to be the first to deliver the news that millions had prayed for. Typewriters would soon thunder, telephones would buzz endlessly, and radios across America would carry the words that peace had finally come. This photograph freezes the exact second when relief turned into a race, when the story of a generation was breaking live. It is more than just men in suits rushing for telephones. It is the moment the world exhaled after years of unimaginable sacrifice and war. Summer 1941, Lviv, Ukraine. This harrowing photograph captures a Jewish woman fleeing in terror as young nationalists, armed with clubs, chase her through the streets. It was part of a brutal pogrom that unfolded in the chaos following the Nazi invasion, where German death squads and local collaborators murdered thousands of Jews in just days. The woman's desperate expression and torn clothing reveal not just violence, but humiliation, systematic dehumanization that stripped victims of dignity before life itself. Behind her, the mob surges forward, fueled by hate, while the world around them seemed to look away. This image is not just about one woman's suffering, but about the horrors ordinary people can inflict when consumed by ideology and fear. It remains a haunting reminder of how fragile humanity becomes when hatred takes control. March 10, 1933, just weeks after Hitler rose to power, the Nazi regime wasted no time in turning humiliation into a weapon. This photograph shows Dr. Michael Siegel, a respected Jewish lawyer in Bavaria, shaven, barefoot, and beaten, forced to march through Munich with a sign hanging from his neck. "I will never again complain to the police." His crime? Protesting the brutality of the SS. The message was clear, not just for him, but for every Jew in Germany. Resistance would be met with degradation. Crowds watched as law and justice itself were paraded through the streets in chains. This single image marks the beginning of a nightmare, when intimidation and public shaming laid the groundwork for genocide. It is a chilling reminder that the Holocaust did not start with camps and gas chambers. It began with humiliation, silence, and fear. May 4, 1980, inside a packed stadium, the beautiful game was suddenly interrupted by devastating news. As the announcement spread that Yugoslavia's president, Josip Broz Tito, had died, the players on the field broke down in tears. This photograph captures that raw, unfiltered grief. Footballers covering their faces, others sobbing openly, their bodies trembling under the weight of history. For decades, Tito had held together a fragile federation of nations through his rule, and his death marked the beginning of an uncertain future. The match stopped, but what lingered was more than silence. It was the collective realization that an era had ended. This image is not just about sport, but about how politics and identity are woven so tightly into the fabric of a nation that even on the pitch, history strikes like a thunderclap. In 1936, the world's tallest man, Robert Wadlow, stood at an astonishing 8 feet 11 inches, towering over everyone he met. This rare photograph captures him in a playful moment with performers from the Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus, where he toured for a year. Surrounded by little people entertainers, the scene looks almost like something out of Gulliver's Travels, a giant among men, tied up in laughter and string. Yet behind the spectacle was a young man who never stopped growing, a gentle soul whose height was both his gift and his burden. Robert became a symbol of wonder in an age fascinated by human extremes, but also a reminder of the fragility that came with it. Less than 5 years later, his extraordinary life was cut tragically short at just 22 years old, leaving behind a legend that still amazes the world today. 1951, before she became a global icon, Marilyn Monroe was still experimenting with who she was, both on and off the screen. In this rare photograph, she trades the glamour of Hollywood lights for the simplicity of the beach, bow in hand, aiming with playful intensity. It's an image that strips away the myth and shows a young woman in transition, confident, curious, and unknowingly on the brink of superstardom. The contrast is striking, the sex symbol in a bikini, yet focused on an ancient sport of precision and strength. Monroe was more than just the image the world consumed. She was spirited, adventurous, and endlessly human. This candid moment reminds us that even legends had days where they were simply trying something new, long before their name became eternal. Paris, 1883. The streets echoed not with politics or protest, but with the sound of hammers and rivets shaping a symbol of freedom. This remarkable photograph captures the Statue of Liberty before she ever graced New York Harbor, her colossal pieces assembled in a Parisian courtyard. Workers stand dwarfed by the torch and face, fragments of a giant waiting to be born. To those present, it was a marvel of engineering. To the world, it would soon become an icon of hope. When fully completed, Lady Liberty was dismantled, shipped across the Atlantic, and reassembled on Bedloe's Island, where she would welcome generations of immigrants with her silent promise. This image freezes her in an unfinished state, a reminder that even the greatest symbols of liberty begin as parts, patiently waiting to be united into something greater. 1961, a time when American car design wasn't just about getting from one place to another, it was about turning heads and capturing imaginations. This rare photograph showcases the Buick Flamingo, a concept car that stunned audiences with its futuristic flair. Its most striking feature? A rotating front seat that swiveled outward, allowing passengers to step in and out with effortless grace. In an era obsessed with space-age innovation and luxury, details like this symbolize the optimism of post-war America, a belief that technology could make even the smallest moments glamorous. Though the Flamingo never went into mass production, it remains a dazzling reminder of when Detroit dreamed big, designing cars not just as machines, but as works of art on wheels. 1941, fear and prejudice gripped America in the wake of Pearl Harbor, and over 120,000 Japanese Americans, most of them U.S. citizens, were forced from their homes and livelihoods. This haunting photograph shows families waiting with their belongings, tagged like luggage, preparing to be sent to incarceration camps under Executive Order 9066. Behind every suitcase was a story: shops abandoned, farms lost, childhoods interrupted. They were not accused of crimes, yet they were treated as threats, confined behind barbed wire for years. The faces in this image reflect uncertainty, sorrow, and resilience, a community stripped of freedom but not dignity. Today, this moment stands as one of America's most painful lessons, a reminder that in times of fear, justice can falter, and the cost is borne by the innocent. September 1970, America was deep in the age of counterculture, horror films, and pop culture experimentation. At Palisades Amusement Park in New Jersey, something unusual unfolded: the Miss American Vampire Contest. Young women dressed in dark gowns, heavy eyeliner, and gothic flair competed for the crown, judged not by traditional beauty standards, but by their eerie charm and dramatic presence. The winner, captured in this photograph, was crowned with a feathered tiara and a sash that proudly read, "Miss American Vampire." The event was part promotion for the cult TV series Dark Shadows and a clever mix of horror and showmanship that reflected the era's fascination with the strange. Looking back, it's a surreal snapshot of when pageantry, pop culture, and the supernatural collided in a way that could only have happened in the 1970s.